I was executive director of Springboard for 30 years. And prior to that, I began my career in corrections. I began as a parole officer in 1974. Justice involved people, you saw them at the end of their career, and it always motivated me to think, how do you get in front of this to avoid, the escalation of criminal involvement? I was one of a handful of female parole officers that were hired. It was a very challenging period of time in 1974 to be a woman in a very male-dominated career. At the time when I joined Springboard in '86, it was very justice related. It had a lot of youth and adult correctional programs, custody programs, and we had group homes, 2 group homes for developmentally disabled, and a very small employment program. We were always based on annualized funding and didn't have that core funding. So you constantly had to look at ways to innovate. Like, how do you get ahead of things? I saw changes in the late 90s where, you had to look at, how services were delivered differently. How do you rely on the community more? What are victims' roles in looking at holding people accountable? So, in embracing restorative justice, so we could look at accountability of an individual who commits a crime, what harm it brings to a victim, and getting different forms of the community, non-traditional partners. We were pioneers. We took a lot of arrows as an agency, and at times you just sort of felt, well, maybe we should just join the packs. Like, I think of our attendance program. I think of it being the first attendance program in Canada, and that it served as a model in the late 90s and early 2000s to develop alternatives to custody for young people, that they could, serve a very highly accountable sentence in the community, get programming that would help them stabilize, and do it in a more normalized environment, non-stigmatizing environment. And I think of those models that really serve to bring other leaders and equip other agencies with tools so that they could help their communities in local areas. This model came together. We received funding for it, and it ended up being expanded across Ontario. And the success of those components of bringing different forms of the community, getting probation more involved, working with public health, so that we could look at a community of support for the people that, were coming in for programming, and that those youth could feel part of a bigger community.